Welcome back to my channel. It's Needles by Tiara here. And on today's tutorial, I'll be taking you through the process of drafting a dartless corset. So all the required measurements you'd be needing is displayed on the screen as we speak. So without no further ado, let's dive right into it. So you'd go ahead to fold your pattern paper into two. At the moment, mine isn't on fold. However, once I'm transferring this directly to my fashion fabric, I would ensure that part is on fold. So with that being said, you'd go ahead to fold your pattern paper like I said, and the next thing you proceed on to doing is to mark our straight line. So for my starting line, I would go ahead to choose any part of my pattern paper. So I'm going to be using that part, and on that point, I would go ahead to mark out a straight line, which will serve as my shoulder point and of course my starting line. Having done that, the next thing we'd move ahead to do is to impute all our basic measurements, which is our point measurement. So placing my tape from the starting line, which is my shoulder point, I'm going to be marking my client's shoulder to bust point. So whatever your client's shoulder to bust point, go ahead to mark it at that point. And now again from my shoulder, I'll be marking my client's shoulder to under bust point, which is that. And again, we're going to be marking our client's shoulder to waist point, which is this. And lastly, we'd go ahead to mark our client's shoulder to full blouse length point. So whatever your client's shoulder to full blouse length point is, just go ahead to mark it at that point. With that being said, I'm going to be taking all these points to these other parts. This is to get the consistency of a straight line. Having done that, we'd go in with our straight ruler and we'll be connecting all those points into each other to form a straight line. So I've done that for my bust point, for my under bust point, for my waist point, and lastly, my full blouse length point. With that being said, we'll go ahead to label our pattern. This is my shoulder point. This is my bust point. This is my under bust point. This is my waist point, and lastly, this is our full front blouse length point, which is this. Having gotten all those measurements, now we'd go ahead to determine our shoulder to chest point. So to do that, go ahead to divide your client's bust circumference by 6 and add 1.5 inches to that measurement. So for mine, I would go ahead to place my tape from my shoulder point and I would go ahead to mark down the value of what I have. Having done that, we'd go ahead to reintroduce our straight ruler and would connect that point into each other to form a straight line. So having done that, we'd go ahead to label this part. So this is my chest point line. Having labeled our pattern, on our shoulder point, we're going to be dividing our client's shoulder circumference by 2. So mine is 16 divided by 2. I'll chalk it down on my shoulder point. Now, whatever you have imputed at your shoulder point line, you bring that same measurement to your chest point, which is this. Now, go in with your straight ruler and connect that point into each other to form a straight line. Now, on our shoulder point, we're going to be imputing our neckline. So the standard neckline measurement is 3 inches by 3 inches. So for my width, I've gone ahead to mark 3 inches. And lastly, for my depth, I'll be marking that same value of 3 inches. Now for my shoulder or my chest point line, I'm going to be coming down from that point by 1 inch. Now with the aid of our curve ruler, we'll be connecting that point into each other to form our neckline. So basically watch the way I'm placing my curve ruler and do go ahead to do same for yours. Now with the aid of a straight ruler, we'll be connecting that point all the way down to our shoulder slope. Now placing our tape from our shoulder slope point all the way down to our chest point, we'll go ahead to fold our tape into 2 to find the midpoint of that line. Now we'll go ahead to chalk down the midpoint of our chest line. Now at that midpoint line, come in by 0.5 inch. And lastly, on your chest point line, you'd be dividing your client's bust circumference by 4. Whatever you have, go ahead to impute it at your chest point line. With the aid of my armhole curve, I'll be connecting from my shoulder slope into that midpoint of 0.5 and all the way down to my chest point line. So basically watch the way I'm placing my armhole curve and do go ahead to connect all the points into each other. So with this being done, we've gotten our armhole curve. Now on your bust point, we're going to be marking our client's bust circumference divided by 4. So whatever we have imputed on our chest point, we'll mark it on our bust point as well. Though this is not required, but at your under bust, just divide your under bust circumference by 4 and go ahead to chalk down that value. The reason why it is not required is because once we connect from our chest point all the way down to our waist point, those lines would be able to accommodate our under bust point. So now on your waist point, divide your client's waist circumference by 4 and go ahead to chalk down that value. Now lastly, at your full blouse length point, you're going to be dividing your client's hip circumference and you go ahead to chalk down whatever value that you have at that point. With that being said, we'll go in with our straight ruler and we'll be connecting from our chest point into our waist point. And extensively from the waist point all the way down to our full blouse length point. So this is it, connecting from your chest point to your waist point with your straight ruler. So this is exactly what I was trying to explain to you. That line would be able to accommodate your under bust point. So it is really not necessary, especially when you're drafting a basic bodice pattern block, which this is it. Now reconnecting from your waist point to your full blouse length point, we'd go ahead to place our slightly curved ruler and would connect it all the way down. Now placing our tape from our shoulder point, we'd go ahead to determine the off shoulder or our over bust for our dartless corset. So this is to determine where you want your cup to start from or where you want your cup to begin. So basically you're going to be playing around with this. For mine, I'll use a total value of 7 inches as my over bust point or off shoulder point. Or you can equally use the distance between your bust point to your under bust point. So placing that distance again from your bust point, you'd go ahead to chalk down whatever value that you have at that point. So this is totally dependent on your client's preference if she wants her cleavage revealing or not. So now on your chest point, you're going to be marking in 0.5 inch at that point. So this is going to help us, or this line basically is going to serve as a guide, and equally that will serve as an opening for the midpoint or the center front of our corset. So now we are going to be taking that value all the way down to your under bust point. So you're going to be marking from your chest point all the way down to your under bust point. And with that being said, you'd go in with your straight ruler and you'll be connecting those points into each other to form a straight line. So having gotten our line at that point, the next thing we'd proceed on to doing is to impute our style line for our corset blouse side bodies. So at that point, basically, you'd be coming up by 1 inch. And now with the aid of your slightly curved ruler, you'll be blending it into your full blouse length, point. So just watch the way I place my curve ruler and do go ahead to replicate same. So with that being done, we'd go ahead to cut out all our parts. So we'd grab our scissors and we'd be cutting out all the parts, following all the point lines and the curve lines that we've marked for our basic bodice block. So with this being done, we'll go ahead to cut out the parts. So please just pay attention to the way I'm cutting or all the parts that I'm cutting off or I'm taking off at this point. being done, our dartless corset front pattern is partly ready. So we're going to keep this and we'll be working our back pattern. So this is my pattern paper for my back bodies. So just like we did with the front bodies, we'll go ahead to roll out a starting line, which will serve as our shoulder point line. So I've gone in with my straight ruler and I would go ahead to mark down or to draw out my starting line, which is my shoulder point line. So placing our tape from the shoulder point line again, we'll go ahead to mark the distance between our client's shoulder to bust point. And now our client's shoulder to under bust point, our client's shoulder to waist point, and lastly, our client's shoulder to back blouse length point, which is this. So now we're going to be taking this measurement all the way around here. This is to get the consistency of a straight line. With that being said, we'll go in with our straight ruler and we'll be connecting all the points into each other to form a straight line. With this being done, we'll go ahead to label our pattern. So this is my shoulder point line. This is my bust point line, my under bust point line, my waist point line, and lastly, my back blouse full length line. So having gotten the basic line, just like we did with the front, we'd place our tape from our shoulder point and would go ahead to mark our client's shoulder to chest point. Remember how we arrived at this value? You'd be using that same formula. So we'd go ahead to mark a straight line at that point and would go ahead to impute or to label this part to be our chest point. With that being done, on our shoulder point line, we're going to be dividing our client's shoulder circumference by 2 and would go ahead to mark it on that point. Just like we did with the front pattern, whatever you have imputed at your shoulder point line, you'll be bringing that same value all the way down to your chest point. Having done that, we'll go in with our straight ruler and we'll be connecting that point into each other. Having done that, the next thing we'd go ahead to impute is our neckline for our back bodies. For your back body, you're going to be maintaining the width of 3 inches, but for your depth, you'd use in between the value of 1 to 1.5 inches. Usually, the back bodies is shorter as compared to the front bodies, which is longer. So now I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch at that point. You could go ahead to use 1.5 inches. Now on my shoulder points, I would go ahead to place my tape and I would come down by 1 inch, which will serve as my shoulder slope. With the aid of our curve ruler, we'll be connecting that point to form our neckline. And now with our straight ruler, we'll be extending that point all the way down to our shoulder slope this way. With that being said, we'll go ahead to place back our tape at the shoulder slope and we'll go ahead to find the midpoint of that line. Now at that midpoint, we'll be coming in by 0.5 inch. And now on our chest point, we'll go ahead to divide our client's bust circumference by 4. Whatever you have as yours, go ahead to impute that value at your chest point. Go in with your armhole curve and connect those points into each other to form your armhole curve. So having done this, we'll go ahead to impute the rest of our measurements. Our bust circumference divided by 4, we'll chalk it down at that point. Now for your waist circumference, you divide it by 4 and chalk it down at that point. But now if you want to achieve a snatching effect for your corset, you're going to be subtracting either 1 or 2 inches from your full waist circumference measurement and chalk down that value at your waist point. Like you can see now at our full blouse length, we went ahead to chalk our client's hip circumference divided by 4 and we've gone ahead to connect all those points into each other to form our basic bodice curve. On our full back blouse length point, we came up by 1 inch on the front bodice and would go ahead to do same for our back bodies as well. So having done that, we'd go ahead to place our tape from our shoulder starting line. Now we'd go ahead to determine the off shoulder point for our back bodies. So note that we're going to be attaching a yoke, so we'd need to take off the parts for your yoke. So this is for our back bodies. Usually for the back bodies, the yoke is always deeper, So I'm going to be using the total value of my shoulder to chest point line as my yoke depth. So on that point, which is my chest point line, which is my yoke depth, I'm going to be taking off 1 inch or 1.5 inch, which will serve as our back opening for our corset. So having done that, I'll go in with my straight ruler and I'll be connecting from my chest point all the way down to my full back blouse length point to connect those points into each other to form a straight line. Now, placing our tape from our back neckline depth, we're going to be taking in 0.5, 1 inch, 1.5 inches. It totally depends on your preference and exactly what you'd be working with at this point. So if you're attaching a fastener, 0.5 inch is okay, or a pressing button. If you're attaching maybe some button, you could use 1 to 1.5 inches. So it totally depends on your preference. Now on my chest point, I'll divide my bust span by 2 and I'll be marking it on that point, which is this. Now with the head of my curve ruler, I'll be connecting from that point all the way into that point on both sides. So basically watch what I'm doing and do go ahead to replicate same. So having drawn out our keyhole neckline for our back yoke, on that point, which we've eliminated the 1 inch for our corset back opening, on your chest point, come down by 0.5 inch. So this is basically to achieve a stylish, curve at that point. So we do not want it entirely straight. We want it a bit stylish and a bit curved at that point. So go in with either your curve ruler or you could go in with your slightly curved ruler. It entirely depends on your preference. So I've gone in with my slightly curved ruler and I'll be connecting from that point into my chest point line on the side. So now I'll be extending that line on my chest point all the way down there to my new chest point line. So this is basically it. I hope you understand. So I'm going to be making a dot on this point. So this is where you'll be attaching your eyelet to your corset back bodice, which is this. If you have watched this video to this point, what are you waiting for? Hit on the subscription button, like, share and follow this channel for more related content. Now we'll go ahead to make some dots on this point, which will be attaching our buttons. And now we'll go ahead to eliminate this part. So we'll be taking off this part, hence the reason why I am making a stroke on this point. Now we'd go in with our scissors and we'd go ahead to cut out all the parts. So please just pay attention to all the parts that I'm eliminating off from our pattern. Just watch while I take you through the process. So at this point, on our waist point, we'd go ahead to blend our part. We do not want any sharp edge at any given point. Hence the reason for that. Having eliminated all our side, now at this point, which we took out 1 inch for our corset opening, we'd go ahead to take off this point this way. So please watch the way I'm cutting this part and do pay attention. And of course, go ahead to replicate same on yours. So now at this point, which is my shoulder point, I'll go ahead to take off that part. So at this point, go ahead to detach your yoke from your lower bodice, which is basically this. And voila, your front and your back bodice is partly ready for your dartless corset. So I do not want this video coming out long. So I'm going to be uploading the part 2 of this video on my channel. So please hit on the subscription button to get notified once we post that. So you can see how beautiful, how perfect, how consistent. This is beautiful beyond perfection, and this would certainly be your end result. Thank you, and see you on my next video.